Bada boom, chillers fam in the room. How you doing? Before we start this video, man, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like the video, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, and make sure you guys hit that post notification bell so you guys never miss an episode of the Chill Report, because we are live every single weekday talking about the latest going on in sports. So make sure you guys never ever miss an episode. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get to the video, man. Let's get it. So the Cleveland Browns head coach Todd Monken has officially named Deshaun Watson the Week 1 starting quarterback, concluding a highly publicized training camp quarterback battle versus young quarterback Shedeur Sanders. So yeah, Deshaun Watson will be the starter for the Cleveland Browns going into this season. You guys know I was very vocal as far as I'm a huge Shedeur Sanders fan, just of what he was able to do in college, the talent, the energy around the team when he was able to step in as a starter. You guys know he kind of had a rocky start in his NFL career. If you guys know, kind of slipping all the way down to the 5th round in the draft out of nowhere when he was originally supposed to be the second quarterback off the board, but stuff happens like that. So he ended up going to the Browns. And we ultimately ended up here between the quarterback battle between him and Deshaun Watson, with Deshaun Watson being fully, ready to go after a couple injury setbacks, him being fully ready to go. So we enter training camp with Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders quarterback battle. And as you guys heard, Deshaun Watson has now won that quarterback battle. First off, let me say this. Once again, I have no problem with Deshaun Watson as an NFL player. As a football player, I have no problem with Deshaun Watson. I was a Deshaun Watson fan, and I rock with Deshaun Watson as a football player, and just what he can do on the football field inside the lines. I rock with Deshaun Watson as far as, like I said, as a football player inside the lines. I am a Deshaun Watson as a football player supporter, especially during his time in Houston, because that was when I felt like he was at the top of his game, at the peak of his game. At that point in time, I would rank him top 5 quarterback in the NFL at that time. And honestly, you could argue he would not be 5. And I would probably say that with my chest, honestly. During that time when he was in Houston, he was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and he won 5. So now what that list would look like, it would take a while for me to think and break that down. But he was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL at one point, and I was a huge Deshaun Watson fan as far as like on the football field and what he could do inside the lines. But he hasn't had the best of luck when it comes to, playing the game of football, going to the Cleveland Browns. He hasn't had the best of luck. As y'all know, they traded for him and signed him to a 5-year, $230 million, fully guaranteed $230 million deal. Now, y'all already know I'm about everybody getting the bag, so I had no problem with that. I'm about everybody getting the bag, and if you can get the bag, congratulations to you. So I had no problem with that. I'm about everybody getting the bag. So shout out to Deshaun Watson as far as that. My issue was, and the reason why I said that, and I think it probably will happen next offseason, so y'all keep an eye on this. My thing was, I feel like that this whole situation has ran its course. And what I mean by this whole situation is, they brought Deshaun Watson in to be, let's be real, the franchise savior, if you will. They brought him in to be like the franchise guy. Let's turn this organization around. They were moving on from Baker Mayfield because they had the whole Baker Mayfield drama. Baker Mayfield was the guy, and they believed in him for a little bit, but then he kind of had the OBJ, drama, so they kind of lost faith in him, and then everybody kind of sided on the side of OBJ. So the locker room lost faith in Baker Mayfield, and then for the first time in history, we got to see a top 5 quarterback in the peak of their career come available for the first time. He's the best quarterback to ever come available as far as in his prime with now granted, he was able to be available because of a lot of wrong reasons. Okay. But that was the first time we were able to see a quarterback of his caliber in the peak of his career, a top 5 quarterback who was doing all these elite things. That was the first time that we seen a quarterback like Deshaun Watson come available. Pause. And we were able to kind of see where the rest of the NFL was thinking as far as how they valued him at that point in time. There were a couple teams that were after him, including my team, the Atlanta Falcons. We were pursuing him to try to bring him home to Atlanta. And it was the Cleveland Browns. Okay, those were the two front runners, okay? And for good reason, okay? They were, think about this. Now, granted, like I said, the allegations and stuff off the field, he was available due to all the wrong reasons. We can agree on that. But we're talking about Deshaun Watson as a football player. The allegations, I respect them, I acknowledge them. But right now, we're just talking about Deshaun Watson as a football player, okay? At the time, it's understandable why teams were willing to go out on a limb and acquire Deshaun Watson. In his time in Houston, 54 games played, over 14,000 yards, 104 career touchdown passes, 36 interceptions, and a 104.5 quarterback rating, and once again was a top 5 quarterback in that time in Houston. He was a top 5 quarterback at that time. So it's understandable why teams were willing to go out on a limb and go acquire Deshaun Watson to come be their franchise quarterback. The Cleveland Browns paid him 5 years, $230 million guaranteed. So he chose to go to the Browns, obviously, right? So, of course. So he gets to the Browns, and they're putting this pressure on, well, not pressure on him, because, I mean, if they pay you $230 million, then granted, you have earned the right to have a little pressure on you. They paid you. Look, somebody paid me $230 million. I expect the organization to be like, all right, Chill, we need you to make it happen. Hey, Chill, we need to make the playoffs. Chill, we need to kind of have you to have a great season this year. Chill, we need you to lead the guys. Chill, we need you to be like the franchise, face as far as being like the face of the franchise. Hey, Chill, we need you to turn some things around this year. We need to, get to some, extraordinary points because we paid you $230 million. I'm expecting that if they pay me, once again, 5 years, $230 million, fully guaranteed. Now, granted, that's not his fault that they paid him that. That is not his fault. He was already on a contract, but they gave him another one. So it's not his fault that they gave him that contract. That's not his fault at all. However, I also understand that once a team pays you big money, like the Cleveland Browns did, they're going to naturally have some expectations for you. And now, granted, I don't feel like Cleveland gave him the best chances to succeed. I don't. As far as going to get the necessary receiving threats, as far as going to get the players that he probably needed to be successful. I don't think they built the best team around Deshaun Watson. I'll be honest with you guys. I think what happened is they went and got Deshaun Watson, and I'll say this until the end of time about Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns as far as their partnership together. They went and got Deshaun Watson, and they said, make it work. That is my full belief on like how their mind as far as Deshaun Watson went. They went, okay, let's travel on the private plane. Let's go recruit him. Let's go get Deshaun Watson here. They got him there. They paid him $230 million, fully guaranteed. Be our franchise quarterback. That's what we got to work with. Make it work. Make it work. And what did Smokey's mom on Friday say? Hey, make it enough. Hey, they said make it enough. Work with what you got. Pause. Make it enough. We got this for you. We paid you $230 million, so make it work. That's what I feel. That's how I really feel like they handled the partnership between them and Deshaun Watson. And like I said, because of the money they paid him, I can't say that I can't say that I blame them, because once again, $230 million fully guaranteed. All right, you kind of got to make it work. They paid you $230 million, so they really can't go get nobody else. But being objective, they didn't give him any real chance, in my opinion, to succeed. They didn't go get him no number one receiver. They didn't go get him no receiver. Now, people could argue Jerry Jeudy, but and no offense to Jerry Jeudy, I rock with Jerry Jeudy. Don't get me wrong. David Njoku, I rock with both of them. Okay, as far as as football players and just their talent as being football players, I rock with Jerry Jeudy. I rock with David Njoku. So they've had some nice receiving options, but I feel like if they really wanted to make it work, they should have it should have been like a step thing. So, okay, you go get Deshaun Watson. Okay, cool. And then how about you go get Deshaun Watson and do you also go get like a solidified number one stats to back it up number one receiver? So, okay, so it makes it easier. How about you go get the D? Well, you know, he's not going to be D-Hop. But how about you go get a D-Hop to your Deshaun Watson? How about you go get like a real solidified guy that's been doing it that has the stats to back it up? I feel like they should have went that route, and I don't feel like they ever did. They kind of just said, make it work. Over his time as a Cleveland Brown, he's thrown for over 3,000 yards, 19 passing touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Now, he has 2 injury setbacks in his time with Cleveland. Y'all know he tore his Achilles, which gave us a great Jameis Winston post-game press conference moment of him standing by his teammate Deshaun Watson. I'm sorry, but that Jameis Winston press conference was a hilarious moment. It was, and the funny part was everything Jameis Winston was saying was true. Like, he was their quarterback, you know, he fought hard to be on the field and everything like that. But it's just the motivational tone that Jameis Winston was explaining himself. It was hilarious. But anyway, he stood by Deshaun Watson, but he had his Achilles tear, and then coming off of the Achilles tear, Deshaun Watson, during his recovery, he was on his way back to, on the field. But during his recovery and recovering from the Achilles injury, he, in a way, had an injury setback and essentially tore it again. So it was kind of like a thing of, it almost reminded you, like, I don't know if you guys remember, but in basketball, a funny thing happened with that, with Klay Thompson. The former Splash brother. Klay Thompson kind of had a thing like that, if y'all know about Klay Thompson. He tore his ACL with the Golden State Warriors. He tore his ACL. But in his recovery, he tore his ACL while he was recovering to get back from his torn ACL. He tore his ACL, and then he tore his either he tore his Achilles again or he tore his ACL again. It was like one of those kind of things. So stuff like that happens, but it's kind of unforeseen. You kind of can't predict injuries in general, but it's kind of one of those things to, like, off the wall, kind of bad luck kind of things, right? Deshaun Watson had that, but over his time in Cleveland, like I said, over 3,000 yards, 19 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Okay, so it's not terrible, but let's be real. Is it $230 million worth? No, which is why I say, and I still stand on this hill, I feel like next offseason, because the way that the Cleveland Browns have structured this deal, to the point to where they don't need to keep Deshaun Watson after this year. They don't need to keep him after this year. Next year, they're in a situation where they can let Deshaun Watson go. Okay? So I feel like them naming him the starter, here's what I feel like they're doing. Number one, I'm not going to ignore the fact that he won the starting job and say he didn't earn it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, okay, if he won the starting job, he played well enough to the point where they saw something to name Deshaun Watson the starter, at least over Shedeur Sanders, who was obviously his competitor for the QB1 job. Okay. Now, the reasoning for them naming him the starter is a couple reasons, in my opinion. Number one, you can argue that he hasn't had a fair chance outside of injuries. He hasn't really had a fair chance outside of injuries, right? The injuries have been there. He hasn't had a fair chance as far as a full season, fully, entrenched, as far as being a Cleveland Browns quarterback. He needs a full go at it pause to have like a chance to just get fully acquainted, fully used to, the Cleveland system, playing in Cleveland, without no injuries, without no setbacks, without no extra pressure. He needs a full season of just relaxed QB play. Okay, so they're going to give him that chance and that benefit of the doubt to do that this year. That was one of the reasons why I feel like they named him the starter. The second reason as to why I feel like they named him the starter is, let's not ignore the elephant in the room. And I will continue to say this. It ain't his fault he got the bag, but he got the bag, okay? They paid this man $230 million fully guaranteed, and they like, we haven't gotten nothing out of our $230 million investment. So what I feel like this is their way of saying, let's just get something out of Deshaun Watson. If it don't go well, if it don't go how we want it to, whatever, but let's get something out of him. Let's try to use everything that we can possibly get out of Deshaun Watson. Pause at this point. Let's just try to benefit something from Deshaun Watson. Let's try, in his potential last year on this team, let's try to see, can he produce something for us? Pause. Can he do something? Pause. So I feel like that's what this is. They're gonna try to see, okay, we're paying him $230 million fully guaranteed. Let's just try to see if he can produce something. Pause. Just see if he can give us something that we can be proud of. Pause. So that's the other reason I feel like he was named the starter. The third and final reason as to why I feel like he was named the starter is I feel like they're not ignoring the past. And here's what I mean by that. The same thing when you see a quarterback like Tua go to the Falcons, you see a quarterback like Kyler Murray go to the Vikings. It's a thing of you're looking at what this player has done. All right. While they aren't that elite player that they once were, or looked at as the elite player that they once were, Tua isn't looked at the way he once was as far as being an elite quarterback in the NFL. Kyler Murray isn't looked at as far as being an elite quarterback in the NFL the way he once was. Deshaun Watson isn't looked at as far as being an elite quarterback in the NFL like he once was. So I feel like they're trying to give him, I call it you can say a second chance as far as proving his worth. And so it's kind of like a second chance to prove, okay, you used to be able to do this. Let's try to see if there's just a little shred, a little grain, a little hope that maybe you can kind of harvest that version of what you once were into being the Deshaun Watson that you are now. Can you recreate that success that you had in Houston? Can you recreate that and kind of shift back closer to being that elite quarterback that you used to be? Now, you might not get back to being that level, because once again, he was a top 5 quarterback at one point. So you might not get back to being that level, but can we just get close to being that version of you? Let's see if you can get back to being that version of yourself. I feel like they're going with that mindset. Like, let's see if he can kind of, okay, with a fully healthy offseason, with a fully healthy year, he's fully back 100%. Let's try to see if he can rekindle his magic, pause, to try to see if he can, turn into a little version or a little grain of Houston Texans Deshaun Watson. Let's see if he can kind of flip that switch. And I'm going to say this. The Deshaun Watson as a football player supporter in me, there's a part of that side of myself, because I still rock with Deshaun Watson as far as being a football player. Inside the lines, as a football player, I rock with Deshaun Watson, okay? There is a little hope from me, and I know people say, well, hope, I mean, it ain't good to hope. You could say that, true. But there's a little hope, a little wish, if you will, that maybe, just maybe there is just a little bit of that Houston Texans Deshaun Watson left. Just maybe. Maybe he needed time to get accommodated to playing in Cleveland. Maybe he needed some motivation of people saying he wasn't good enough. Maybe people needed some motivation to say he wasn't worth the contract. So there is a little hope from me that said, okay, maybe Deshaun Watson can regroup as far as being closer to that Texans version of himself instead of this Cleveland Browns version that we're now privy to. Like maybe there's a little bit of that elite quarterback left in Deshaun Watson. A part of me really hopes that. Now, be honest with you guys, do I think that that's realistic? To be completely objective with it, do I think that's realistic to hope that? No, I'll be honest, because of what he has provided to us on film as of late. As of the Deshaun Watson that we saw in Cleveland, I didn't see the guy that played in with the Houston Texans. I didn't see that guy. That guy, let me tell y'all something. That guy that played in Houston, man, that quarterback that played for the Houston Texans, that guy would take, that guy would take trash. And no offense to any other players that he, managed to play with, but he would take trash outside of a few outliers, that he did have the privilege of playing with, like DeAndre Hopkins. He took not so good or not so highly touted players and made it work. As far as just him doing his job, made it work. When the team, for no apparent reason, when they traded your number one receiver, and no offense to David Johnson, no offense to him, but when they traded your number one receiver, DeAndre Hopkins, who was still DeAndre Hopkins to the fullest at this point, they traded him for David Johnson. Why? But still, even with that being the case, Deshaun Watson still managed to be a top 5 quarterback in that time. And like I said, you could argue he won 5. That guy could take whatever hand he was dealt, pause, and he could somehow make it work and turn it into something and make kind of Russell Westbrook, if you will. Russell Westbrook was on the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he won the MVP when they didn't really have too much to be, happy about. They lost Kevin Durant to the Warriors. They had Steven Adams there, but, it was no replacing KD, obviously. So you could argue from the outside looking in, people could look at that team and say, oh, well, he didn't have really anything on that team, but he still made it work, to at least from an individual standpoint, as far as still making sure that he was able to do his job at a high level. That was Deshaun Watson. At least the Deshaun Watson, the quarterback that played for the Houston Texans, the Deshaun Watson as a quarterback that I was a fan of. That guy can take whatever and still put on. There's a hope that version is still there. But from what I have been able to see in his time in Cleveland, in his time as a Brown, I don't see that Deshaun Watson anymore. I don't see that. And here's the thing, because I know a lot of people may have, taken this the wrong way, pause. I'm not saying that I'm, like happy that he no longer looks like that elite quarterback. No, matter of fact, I'm the opposite. One of my most dreaded things is seeing a player take that fall off, or that down step, like having that, going from that elite level to going to that. All right, you're going down a tick to get to that average to good level. I hate seeing that, especially when you're one of the elite players in sports or in your field. I hate seeing that, but it's just what it is sometimes. I haven't seen that Deshaun Watson that I saw in Cleveland. That I saw in Houston. I haven't seen that in Cleveland. I haven't. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just feel like he was never given the tools needed to succeed in Cleveland as a quarterback. And I will stand on that heel to the end of time. Even if they do get rid of Deshaun Watson next year, I still will say they didn't give him the best chance to win. I'll say that. And I'll defend him as far as saying they didn't give him the best chance to win, in my personal opinion. I don't feel like they did. But the point is, do I feel like that they can give him a chance to be successful this year? They have some receivers. They got KC. They still got Jerry Jeudy, obviously. They have a couple receivers that I think that could help Deshaun Watson. Like I said, they got KC Conception, Isaiah Bond. They got some good Harold Fannin. They got some good tight ends. They got some good receiving threats. Okay? So, I hope and I pray, as a football player, as a fan of Deshaun Watson, as a football player, I hope, knock on wood, I hope that he lives up to every bit of hype and every bit of confidence that this organization has in him, naming him the starting quarterback. I hope he lives up to it this year. I really do. I hope he lives up to it. Does the history say he will, as far as a Cleveland Brown? No, but I hope he changes that story this year. I do. It's just, I feel like this is Deshaun Watson's, you could say, last chance. It's, at least as far as this organization, this is his last chance to be looked at as a valuable quarterback. I feel like in the valuable, respected quarterback in the NFL. This is his last chance, because if he doesn't do his thing this year, let's say he plays 6 games and gets benched, right? If that happens, and Shedeur Sanders, is the starter after that, I feel like around the NFL, people are going to start to look at Deshaun Watson, and you can say people already look at him like that now, but people are going to start to look at Deshaun Watson like a damaged product. And you could argue people look at him like that now because of the stuff off the field, but people are going to look at him as like a damaged product, to where the point like, we don't really see the value in you anymore. So I feel like this is his last chance to prove he's actually a valuable, respected quarterback in this league. So I feel like, I'm hoping that he can, as far as the football player's perspective, I hope he can, flip the switch and turn into that, at least close to that elite quarterback that we all knew from Houston. But I will say this, is it from the history as a Cleveland Brown, it's not looking very promising. Put it like that. But he's named the starter, so we'll see what he does. Y'all let me know what y'all think about it in the comments below. With that being said, man, your boy Chill is out, man. Peace.